Gaming fundamentally is a distraction for us to enjoy a form of escapism, and that often takes hours of our day without us even realising. And for the most part, when you leave your controller or even your keyboard, you're going to feel like you've had a good time and made some progress in whatever you may be playing. But this doesn't necessarily mean a game has to be fun for you to enjoy it, right? But what do I mean for a game to be fun? People mostly connect fun with good, and they don't always come hand in hand. For the best example I can give you is Batman and Robin isn't a good movie at all, but it's very fun to sit through. You could watch the cheesy acting and terrible representation of the most iconic villains Batman has to offer, but to this day I won't stop quoting its wacky dialogue and anything that Arnold Schwarzenegger has to offer in that movie.
Stay cool, bird boy.
But there can also be an opposite to this. The Godfather is one of my favourite films of all time, but I wouldn't tell people to go in it expecting to come out with a massive smile across their face. It's a movie filled with strong characters and a slow build, but thought provoking and makes you really feel and think about the story, and you're not going to be sitting through it laughing your head off. Therefore the movie is very good, but I wouldn't call it a fun time, but it is totally worth a watch. Something that I would say has that perfect blend of what could make something fun therefore not being all that good is the horror genre of the slasher in the 80s. These movies were all a blast to sit through and they became very self-aware as time progressed. Its gore and over-the-top kills left people cheering, and its charming characters from Freddy to Chucky left people remembering them even still to this day and making them some of the most iconic villains cinema has ever seen. When talking about games that aren't fun, it's hard to think of many, but most people will probably say games like Dark Souls or even Sekiro, games that often have a high difficulty curve. But these games honestly make us knuckle down and earn our fun. It's that sense of success and even overpowering what may have gave us a hard time before. The sense of reward eventually gives you that sense of having fun because you feel like that you've earned it. But I'm not also talking about games that are just borderline crap, or at least not interesting to me anyway. I'm not talking about games that don't have any sense of fun to it because they aren't well developed. I'm talking about games that like to often ask questions which involve an oppressive atmosphere and at most times a depressing experience for you to go through. Every type of media needs a moment where something has to push the boundaries every now and then, to expand on what we can learn from the media and the stories that we can tell. From the iconic Alfred Hitchcock Psycho scene in the shower, which has never been seen before that time, to the introduction of Eminem into the mainstream in 1999. Coming out with the most funny and disturbing lyrics that anyone's heard on the radio, but at the same time he opens up new ways that people view rap and even his persona of Slim Shady. That every time you heard him on the radio you expected him to say something dark for his thoughts, or even maybe through his life, and at the same time maybe something that you agree with or maybe even something that you don't. And Rockstar very much did this with the gaming industry. And in the lyrics of Slim Shady,
"Hi kids, do you like violence?"
Well, do you? For me, when I think of a game that doesn't provide any sense of fun or even any sense of achieving anything, has to be Rockstar's Manhunt. When I was getting footage for my last video on cult classic video games, I've had this thought immediately come into my head. I've played for this game 4 times and I couldn't tell anybody that this game was a fun time, but at the same time I could tell people it's a good game worth experiencing, even if it isn't that great of an experience to sit through. By this point, if you've ever been on YouTube, then you would know what Manhunt is. It's a game that everybody knows about, of course, so I'm not going to go over its overall premise, but it's got a very dark and grotesque tone and even atmosphere. It uses the premise of snug movies and psychopaths that somehow make it feel more grounded and even more realistic than GTA has ever done before. It gained a lot of criticism for its use in violence and how brutal it pulls them off. During gameplay and when you have to pull off these executions, I don't think there was ever a time where I was excited to get them done. There was never that moment where you cheer of excitement or even have a laugh because how over the top it is, because overall it's all pretty grounded. The best way I can compare something like Manhunt would have to be to The Punisher, which came out at a very similar time, which got in trouble for the same thing with its grotesque use of violence. The Punisher game really focused on creating a sense of a power fantasy that the Punisher dishes out to criminals, using anything you can in the environment to torture and even maim and make their heads explode or even put them in bear traps and set them on fire, but it does it in a way that's over the top and even comedic at times because it's something you would expect from Punisher. Where Manhunt's use of violence is something that is very easy and accessible to everyone in a real life basis. To pick up a plastic bag and choke a man out and punch his face half to death while he's screaming behind the plastic bag, or even putting putting a crowbar through a man's head, or even just simply slicing a man's throat. It's something that's so down to earth and so simple, but at the same time has a long lasting effect because of their use of sound and even imagery. But regarding all of this, Manhunt really isn't that bad compared to nowadays, but that's because Manhunt was able to push the limits at its time. Rockstar got in a lot of trouble for GTA being able to run over people for points necessarily, but this time where Manhunt actually was asking you to kill people to get points was almost like a middle finger to anybody who said that GTA was way too violent. They wanted to push the bar, and they pushed it and raised it in every single way to the stage that Manhunt now would easily get away with being a 15 and people wouldn't even shrug at it being that bad. And though it may be a little bit dated to nowadays standards, I still think people should experience it to see exactly what the controversy was all about, and actually to see how far you would go, and if it actually tells you that this is a little bit too far, or even if it's something that you will see that isn't all that bad and you think it was all over the top and all for nothing. Another very similar game to Manhunt that actually recently came out and many people may not even know about is Blood Trail by Electro Vor on VR. You actually play as a contract killer who depends on smoking crack to get his health back, who lives in a dirty basement which is covered in shit and has to overcome a cult, but there's no story to go along with it, so the only premise I got so far is that you seem to be some sort of crackhead who wants to go out killing a cult for some particular reason. I'm very excited to see when they add a story just so we can sort of see if there's any reason behind this. But as a premise it seems pretty dark already, but its use in gore, violence, guns and even its combat is something like we've never seen before on VR. The detail in the gun control, reloading animations is very realistic, and the blaring sounds of gunshots which rebound of small hallways gives the game a sense of violence and even awareness that any other VR game hasn't really come close to. In most VR games, when you shoot a guy they fall down and they die, but in this game when you shoot a guy they fall down and left squirming and crying for their lives or even choking on their own blood. The sounds here really do make a big impact, very much like Manhunt's did with its executions. The idea that you're able to shoot someone and you've caused them a lot of pain is very vocal here, but at the same time it's also very visual. The use of violence in this game to see body parts fly off or even see holes and blood stains build up across clothing and even across the walls makes you realise how much of a massacre or even makes you realise how much pain you may be causing to these people. And I've played this game quite a few times. I don't go back to it often, but I go back to it with most updates to see what they've changed and see if they've actually pushed it a bit further or even taken away anything that they may have seen a little bit too far. I'm still of course waiting for that story as I said earlier, but it's its tone and message which could be the most important part of this whole game. But for me, when I come out of playing this game, I'm not left there laughing or being like, wow, this is cool, or I don't even have a smile on my face. It actually puts me in a moment of tense atmosphere, almost anxiety building, and at the same time it makes me think about what the possibilities are with guns in my hand. It's incredible what a game can make you think, but at the same time these have to be made to be able to push the limits of when it may be a little bit too far with violence in VR. But why do people play games like this? Why do people play games that put them in bad experiences? Well, it could actually be a very different form of exposure therapy. Throwing yourself into a deep end like holding a tarantula in your hands, or even swimming in a very deep ocean to get over that fear of thalassophobia. It's a very intense way of overcoming anxiety, but it works for many people because it's able to experience what is happening at first hand and seeing how your body reacts to high stress, tension and situations. There is a study on this, and it's exactly why so many people enjoy watching horror movies or even playing horror games. It distracts you from dwelling on that past, present or even future of the anxieties that you may have. Playing something or even watching something in a controlled environment lets you able to take on that anxiety in short bursts. Whether you're talking about the constant depressing intense atmosphere of a survival horror genre which asks you to focus on your supplies, your health, ammo and even high stress situations like Nemesis chasing you. But it's entirely down to these high stress situations which allow us as players to get a full body experience of anxiety and how we can control it and even calm ourselves mentally when it comes to acting like this in the real world. For example, Far Cry is a series which has always focused on the crazy and unrealistic side of being trapped in a place that you have no control within. But Ubisoft really wanted to try something totally different with Far Cry 2, which focuses on being stuck in a mercenary ruled Africa, as you have to manually focus on maps and how to get to your destinations with no fast travel. There's no pause game when you do look at these maps, you have to make sure your guns stay clean and don't jam, and on top of that your character also has malaria, so you have to make sure you have medicine and also that you don't die from that. This game is very much a split in the fan base because of its high stress gameplay that requires players to be on top of their game to make sure they feel in control of the oppressive and long-winded world that they created in this game. It's an experience that I honestly won't forget because of its style, and it really stands out in the series because it felt like something totally different, and it felt like it had something to say about the state of FPS genre at the time, and even how it makes you engage with the world that you have to overcome. And there are many games out there like this which require you to live inside its world to really get the full experience. Whether you're talking about the Stalker series or even Kingdom Come Deliverance, I wouldn't call these experiences fun but intensely memorable and engaging because of their tones which are uncomparable to anything else out there, which ask you to live inside their world to really get the full experience, and that's why a game doesn't necessarily have to be fun. For you though, it could be totally different. You could actually really enjoy a game like Manhunt and get big laughs every time you see the kills, but for me, I don't personally see these as fun, but it doesn't mean that they're bad. They make me think about games that I'm actually playing currently. It makes me think about games which people play and don't even think about the context of the violence or even the context of the world that they're living in. But these games make you think about that and make you take in everything about the environment, and even make you think about the consequences of the actions of the character in the story at hand. But playing these games as well also got me thinking about what message I want to spread in each video that I make. Do I always want it to be uplifting? I do aim to inspire, and I hope to make people feel good about themselves and confident in what they believe in, but sometimes it is good to have a reminder that some things are bad and some things are not all that great, because these moments test us as people to see how we've grown and what we can overcome as people. It made me think about being independent and focusing on your own content and even form of art, making sure it's different from others, and most importantly making sure you have something to add to the conversation, because sometimes people just agree with other people and the conversation stays dull, boring, and there's nothing new to add to it. But if you're able to bring in something new or new light or even a new experience, then that's what keeps the conversation fresh and rolling, and that could help us push the boundaries and then actually help us evolve on what we see acceptable, and even make us evolve and accept what could even be the new form of fun. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and hey, if you find these games fun, of course I'm not judging you and I'm not saying you're wrong. Maybe I'm the one who's wrong, but personally I just like to see what you think of games like this. What games have you played that's left you with an experience that you often think about, though you wouldn't say that you necessarily had a good time with it? Not saying that the game is bad, but just saying that it made you think about something other than always having a blast when playing video games. I did hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please subscribe, and why not leave a like down below for more videos like this every week on a Thursday. And of course I'll see you at the next checkpoint. Bye bye.